Hey, welcome to another episode of the Daily Log Diaries. This is episode 9, and I think this week's episode is going to feel just a little bit different. I am pretty much just going to podcast about a topic over 14 or 15 minutes of footage of me updating my notebooks. And those topics are why I am reaching for my traveler's notebooks again and how I maintain 4 different notebooks basically. Because this week it's been a little crazy and I'm reaching for my traveler's notebooks a little bit more than my Hobonichis this week, but then by the end of the day I'm always back in my Hobonichis. So I'm getting a little bit stressed out. So I'm hoping just chatting through this will help calm me down a bit. And if you are a fellow planer hopper, then maybe this is helpful for you to realize that you are not alone, potentially in good company. So let's start with my Hobonichis. I've been using Hobonichi products for over 5 years now, if you count my tenure in 2023. And when I started using Hobonichis, I was a very different person with a very different set of needs out of planning and journaling. In 2019, I was freshly married, still relatively fresh out of college, living on my own for the first time, and learning how to be an adult. So what I needed out of my system was a bit more productivity focused. I needed something that could help me write down every little detail of every little project that I had, from planning a wedding to maintaining a vehicle, and have a space to start creating systems to capture that information and make them routine so that it was sustainable for me to keep up with for years to come. And the Hobonichis were a great space for me to do that. So after, using them for 5 years, I kind of use them as a bit of a security blanket, I think. They're really comfortable. I've tried the layouts with so many different purposes, and I shift things up with them year to year. So at this point, I feel like I know where information goes. I know the best way to use a particular layout for me and my needs, or at least I think I do. So they're comfort planners. If I'm busy, if I'm overwhelmed, if I'm struggling with my anxiety, I tend to reach for my Hobonichis because they're pre-set up planners and I know how to use them, and I know they have a track record of working for me, so I can pick them up, start using them, and kind of keep going where I left off. I also think at this point, since I've kind of grown up with these notebooks, I really view them as a minimal, functional, streamlined system, because that was what I wanted to get out of this hobby while I was using them, and they were great tools for that purpose. Not to say that the community views Hobonichis as a minimal, functional, streamlined planner. I think they definitely can be, or at least they have been for me. But there's plenty of really creative, beautiful art journals and Hobonichi products that I just adore seeing flip-throughs of, but no, I'm not quite there in my creative journey or how my comfort level, I guess, with using these planners. So like my mental connection to Hobonichi has always been more about productivity focused, because that's what I've always done in them. And I think I could be more creative in these if I worked on that, mental connection and really forced myself to do something creative in them every day until creativity felt second nature in these notebooks. But that kind of brings me to my traveler's notebook. When I started using a traveler's notebook last year, so 2022, I had a different set of needs, and what I'm looking to get out of my planners this year is different as well. 2019, Lindsay was looking for a really streamlined, functional space to get her life together. 2023, Lindsay is looking to slow down, to pull out a fancy fountain pen and write down my random thoughts, to go to a coffee shop and sketch something, and to just slow down and have a more romantic relationship with my notebooks. And I think I could get there with my Hobonichis, but since I've kind of shifted towards that mindset over time, when I introduced the Passport Traveler's Notebook and the Standard Size Traveler's Notebook last year, I have started to view them as a more creative space. It's something I intentionally set out doing. When I started bullet journaling in my Passport, I was drawing in it almost daily. I took a big international trip and drew memories real time in these notebooks. So now I've got this mental connection where traveler's notebooks are a creative space for me. And so when I am feeling like I want to be creative, or if I'm feeling really stagnant and, don't have much things to break down from a productivity standpoint for a week, my traveler's notebooks have more appeal because they mentally fit that vibe of what I'm looking for 2023. They feel slower. They feel like I can be more creative in them because I've got that mental connection established. And I'm still pretty young in my creative journey, I guess. I didn't really start trying to draw until 2020. So we're going on just over 2 years now. And because that neural pathway, I guess, and I know I'm probably not using the right term there, but that mental connection of I am creative and I draw being established in my traveler's notebook, it's just a little bit easier for me to get over that hump and just start sketching when I reach for them, if that makes sense. And I think that's something that I'm going to have to work on, because as much as I love my traveler's notebooks, they can really stress me out because there's a lot of decision fatigue that goes with it because I bullet journal in my Passport. So I have to decide on layouts and things like that are more like micro decisions at the end of the day. But at the same time, I also love that creative flexibility to choose the inserts, the grid size, the layouts of everything, and really just have more creative control over what I want to get out of my particular notebooks. So I think the back and forth is probably going to continue, and there's a part of me that feels really guilty for switching between these notebooks. But when I was thinking about it, I did a video for patrons back in December. I do have a Patreon, by the way. That information is down below if you're ever looking for more content from me. I upload a video basically weekly exclusive for patrons. But that video I did back in December was essentially like my 2022 notebook graveyard. So I pulled out all the notebooks that I tried, abandoned, started and left behind in 2022. And I think that notebook stack counted somewhere around 14 notebooks. So if I find myself jumping back and forth between only these 4 things for the majority of 2023, I think I'm doing pretty good. That's a significant improvement, at least for me. We'll see. Hopefully I don't introduce 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more notebooks throughout the rest of this year. But one of the questions I got was essentially, how do I balance these notebooks, or how do I actually move book? So let me just talk you through my general process. When I move from my Hobonichi weeks to my Passport or vice versa, the main things that I focus on updating are my collections. So my monthly calendar / future log have to be up to date, and I will take time to update all of my habit trackers between the 2 notebooks. And then from there, it's sort of just like guesstimating pages and picking up with a daily log in my Passport, or just starting to plug into the current week within my weekly spread of my weeks. I do backdate or keep them up to date anyway as part of my normal journaling routines. I'm boring. I don't watch TV. I don't watch Netflix. So when I want to have some sort of like planning time, stationary time, decompressing time after work, what I do is I reach for my notebooks and I will backfill them depending on what system I'm in. I don't have a regular cadence with this, so it's not like every Wednesday I sit down and do this, but usually twice a week. I'm like, okay, I want to plan my planners, but I don't want to have to think too hard or break down an actual project, or maybe I don't feel like drawing or being creative in a more traditional sense. So what I do to decompress is replicate information from one spread into another spread. So they stay pretty up to date in general. But when I was like, okay, I want to move back into my traveler's notebooks this week, it was about a 30-minute exercise of updating my habit trackers, backfilling in my weekly spread of my standard size traveler's notebook, which I use for memory keeping, and backfilling in a handful of dailies. The one thing I don't bother to replicate is my Dear Diary journaling spreads. I journal in the daily pages of my Hobonichi cousins, which I think you guys saw when I just did a quick flip. I also have an insert in my standard size traveler's notebook where I do Dear Diary inserts and maybe add in a bit of ephemera or things like that. Those spreads I don't bother to replicate because I would have like really early arthritis, I think, because I write really small as it is and it's just a lot of text to copy from one layout to the other. Also, after doing this for so long, blank pages and my Hobonichi cousin really don't bother me anymore. I'm probably a bit more inclined to try and put something on a daily page when I move back into my Hobonichis, for example, because it's dated and it's there and it's staring at me, but at the same time, I'm pretty comfortable just leaving them blank. And at this point, that blank page is telling me, hey, you were in your traveler's notebooks. So go check out those inserts and see what you were feeling and writing about that. And if I want to flip back through. But otherwise, yeah, I will mirror my weekly spreads of my cousin to my weekly vertical insert in my traveler's notebooks, and I will mirror my weekly spread and translate them into daily logs in my bullet journal, or condense daily logs in my bullet journal into my weekly spread of my Hobonichi. And I know it's a lot. It is. It's excessive, but at the same time, if I'm just in one system, I don't get to really play with my notebooks as much, and that playtime is important to me and it's fun and it's what I enjoy doing. So yeah, if I have 4 notebooks that I bounce back and forth this year, that's fine with me. And depending on my mood, I'm reaching for different things. If, like I mentioned earlier, I'm feeling anxious or overwhelmed, or like I just need something really simple and minimal to get me through, my Hobonichis are the notebooks that I tend to reach for. And if I have a week where I'm just craving to paint on a daily basis, to note every little thing down, to take things a little bit slower, then I'm reaching for my traveler's notebooks. And we'll see, maybe later in the year I'll kind of find a marriage of those two sides of my planner coin and feel like I can stick with one system consistently and kind of merge what I'm looking for into one place. But for now, I think I'm just going to continue to hop as I feel like it. Wrapping up today's episode, I thought I'd just show you my new bag. This is from Madewell, and I'm excited because it actually fits my Hobonichi weeks in the zipper cover. None of my smaller purses do that, so that's another reason I think I keep reaching for my passport, because I know it fits in my purse. But anyway, if you've made it this long, thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.